Welcome back to our Camogie Coach webinar series. On this week's webinar, we're delighted to have Louise Keane, Performance Games Development Administrator with Coch GEA. In the first of two webinars with Louise, this week Louise will outline to coaches the importance of a coaching philosophy. Have your pen and paper ready and enjoy the learning.
Thanks to Niall and to the Camogie Association for having me. So I suppose to start off, our webinar tonight is it's called Making Strength and Conditioning Simple. So what we're going to look at is we'll have a look at some practical applications that can be used in terms of strength and conditioning that you can bring out onto the pitch pretty quickly. But we're also going to have a look at, I suppose, a little bit of the bigger picture. So we're going to take a step back. So for strength and conditioning or athletic development, it's one part of the bigger picture. So we have our skills, our tactics and our systems, nutrition, physiotherapy, psychology, our analysis and our participant feedback and our athletic development is just one part of all of that. Okay, I think sometimes as S&C coaches we can get a little bit lost in the importance of strength and conditioning in our games. So it's just to remember that it is one cog in the wheel, and just one thing in what we'll look at. So taking that step back, we have many different roles within a team. So as an S&C coach or athletic development coach, we're one part, but we have our physios, our nutritionists, our sports psychologists, our performance analysts, obviously our manager and our skills coaches as well. And depending on what team you're with or what level you're at as a coach, you could be just one role within that team. So you could be just the S&C coach or just the skills coach or just the manager, or you could be all of those roles. So you could be managing your team and looking after every other area as well. You could be the first aid on the sideline. You could be talking to them about their nutrition, about their strength and conditioning, every area. Okay, so it can be one role, it could be two roles, it could be all roles. But regardless of what your role is, I think it's really important to look at our own personal development, to learn a little bit more about ourselves as a person, to help with that role, and to help us be a better coach. So with that in mind, what we're going to look at is a little bit of self-awareness. Okay, so we're going to look at our personal vision, we're going to look at our values, we're going to look at our behaviors, and we're going to look at our coaching philosophy. So there's four things here that we're looking at. You might ask why we're looking at these things, but I think if we, no matter what role we play with a team, if we can nail down these things, if we can really take a look at ourselves in terms of what our personal vision is, what our values are, what our behaviors are, and what our coaching philosophy is, then it'll make us a better coach. So it is stripping it right back. It's not going straight into looking at our strength and conditioning or looking at any part of coaching in particular. It's looking at ourselves first. Okay, and if we can do that, then the idea is that we will be more effective as a coach and be more focused as a coach. So we'll start off with our personal vision. There's the four areas here that we're going to look at. If you have a pen and paper, keep it close to you. We'll have a question for you to answer with each of these, that will help you to guide you in looking at our own self-awareness. Okay, so starting off with our personal vision. Okay, so a personal vision is a short statement in which we identify what we want most in life. Okay, so it is looking at us as a person and looking at what we want most in life. Okay, so in order to be able to live our values, and we'll look at our values in a little bit, we must know what's most important to us. We must know what our North Star is. Okay, so we can't stay aligned with those values or with what's most important in life to us if we don't spend time getting curious about what's important to us or naming what's important to us. Okay, so it's really identifying what we want most in life. And that might sound a little bit cheesy, but if you've never written down what your personal vision is in life, now's a perfect opportunity to do it. Okay, so looking at a very short statement, identifying what is most important for you in life. Okay, and that then helps us define success in our own life. So years down the line, when you look back, did you do you consider that you led a successful life? So have you lived a life uh, in order to kind of accomplish what you want most in life? So what we're going to ask is that you write down what your personal vision in life is. So to give you an example, for myself, it's having a positive impact on people. That's what I want to do in life. I want to have a positive impact on people. So and that then will later lead on to our coaching, and hopefully show in how we coach. Okay, so if you have your pen and paper with you, write down the question first. So what is your personal vision in life? And then if you can, write down a few words on what is yours. Okay, so it doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't have to be set in stone. So this is something that you can come back to at any time, and hopefully will come back to. So the 4 things that we look at from our personal vision, our values, our behaviors, and our coaching philosophy are something that once we have down on paper, it's something that we can come back to numerous times. So whether it's every few months, once or twice a year, just to refresh what they are, and to revise them a little bit. So we might touch them up a little bit. You'll probably never change it completely, but you might just reword a few things, freshen it up. So you have a few seconds, write down what you think your personal vision for your life is. Okay, and from there, then we move on to our values. Okay, so our vision in life leads on to our values. Okay, so our values, our principles, or standards of behavior, or one's judgment of what is important in life. Okay, so it's the way of being or believing that we hold most important in life. So again, it's coming back to our personal vision. Okay, everyone has values, but they're much more effective if we clearly define them. Okay, and the same with our personal vision. If we have this written down on paper, if we have a clear idea of what it is to us, then it's much easier to live to those values and to live to that vision. So we have a list of values here on in this image. A pretty big list, but not exhaustive. So have a look through the list of values that are there. Identify ones that you feel are true to you, and write them down. Okay. Values are something that we all have, whether you've thought about it before or not. You have values, whether you've written it down, it doesn't matter. You have them and you live them. But if we can identify them, if we can spend a little bit of time thinking about it and getting curious about it, then we're going to be much more effective in being able to apply that and being able to live that. Okay, we only have one set of values, so we don't shift based on context. So my values as a coach are not different to my values in my job, or when I'm spending time with friends or spending time with family. Our values are our values, and they stay the same regardless of what context we're in. Okay, so the importance of them. So having clearly defined values, having clarity over them, it helps us with decision making. So when we're making decisions, we have our values at the back of our mind guiding us to making those decisions. It strengthens our ability to influence and lead others. So again, when we're around and we're coaching our players, those values are in the back of our mind, and they're helping us to lead the group that we're with. It creates clarity for ourselves, so we're more focused and more productive because of those values and because of being clear on those values. There's reduced stress as a result of the fact that it's helping us make decisions. We're better able to lead, and we're more focused and more productive. And it guides our actions and our behaviors. So having those values, having them clear in our mind, that allows us to make sure that our actions, our behaviors, our decisions are all in line with those values. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the decisions are easier. It just means that we know what our values are, and it helps us have a clear path to what the right decision and the wrong decision is, even if that decision is hard. And most likely it will be the harder decision. So living our values means we do more than professing them. We practice them, we walk the talk. We're clear about what we believe and what we hold important, and we take care that our intentions, that our words, our thoughts, our behaviors are all aligned with those values. So what are your top 2 or 3 values? Okay, so again, have your piece of paper, write down the question first. So what are my top 2 or 3 values? And if we pop back to the list of values here, okay, they tend through research that's been done on this, and they suggest kind of 2 to 3 values, okay, or 2 to 3 key values. So you're talking about the more values you have, the less priority you're going to give to any of those individual values. So if you can hone down on 2 or 3 of them, you're more likely to create behaviors in line with those and be more focused on them. So identify first the ones that you think are important to you and that mean something to you. So you could have a list of 8 or 10 there that are important to you. And once you have that list, then narrow it down. Okay, because a lot of them will be interlinked, but it's about narrowing it down to those 2 or 3 key values that you really want to live by, or that you really feel you already live by. Okay, so once you have those, we'll go into a quick video. So this is a video from Steve Kerr, who, if you're familiar with basketball or the NBA, Steve is the head coach for the Golden State Warriors, and also played for the Chicago Bulls. Okay, so we'll just have a quick listen.
So you can't just create a culture by saying what it is and writing it down. That's a good start, but then you have to follow that up with practicing those values each day. So for example, one of our values is joy. You know, I like to promote a lot of joy within our team. And so that's something I wrote down when I just like Sasha, when I took over the team, I wrote down, you know, what I felt like our culture should be. It was really based on my personality, what was important to me as a coach, because that's, you know, the team should be a reflection of my vision and my personality as a coach. And so joy was one of them. But if you want joy to be part of your culture, you can't just come in and yell at your players all day and have, you know, practices that aren't any fun. There has to be joy in practice, right? Yeah. And so that's why we play music. That's why we have humor. We do birthday videos. We do a lot of fun things. You know, we'll do all kinds of things to create this atmosphere of fun and joy, because if that's going to become part of our culture, the only way for it to happen is for them to feel that each day.
Okay, so 2 things, I suppose, from this video, that for me are really important. Okay, the first thing is the importance of knowing ourselves. Okay, because the more we're comfortable with ourselves, the more we know about ourselves, about our personal vision, about our values, then the better we are as a coach, the more effective we'll be as a coach. Okay, because who we are, it affects how we coach. Okay, every coach is different. So if we give every coach the exact same resources, the exact same knowledge, everything the exact same, people are still going to coach differently because of who they are. Okay, so being able to know a little bit more about ourselves, being able to spend time getting to know our values, our vision, that is going to affect how we coach. Okay, and the second thing then from that is our behaviors. So it's all well and good having our values and having that written down on a piece of paper, but if we don't have behaviors that show those values, then we're wasting our time a little bit. So you might walk into a gym somewhere or into a changing room from a team, and you'll see different values or different words written up on the wall to represent their values. But if that team doesn't have behaviors that show those values, then they're not truly living them. Okay. Similarly, teams at the start of the year have a meeting, they decide on what their values are, and they might never come back to that. They might never actually have behaviors that show those values. They have behaviors, but do they really reflect what their values are? Are you able to walk into that team's gym or onto that team's pitch session and see what their values are from their behaviors? Okay, so the behaviors are a really key part of our values. Okay, so if we don't take the time to translate our values into behaviors so that we can show up on a daily basis in a way that's aligned with our values, we're wasting our time. We're talking a values game, but we're not practicing one. Okay, so we need to define actions that support our values. We also need to define actions that we're tempted to do, even though they're not in line with our values. Okay, so if you think, you might have seen quite a lot on social media over the last kind of couple of years, is as a result of the legacy book about the All Blacks, you see a lot of teams, a picture at the end of their game of them sweeping out their changing room. Okay, and where this stemmed from was that legacy book where the All Blacks talk about sweeping the sheds. Okay, so after their games, they clear out the dressing room, make sure it's left neat and tidy before they leave. And yes, the idea is of this is respect, but it's also to do with humility. So one of their key values is humility, and that nobody looks after them, that they look after themselves. The All Blacks take care of the All Blacks. So when they're finished in the changing room after their match, it's clean before they leave, so that nobody else would have to come in and clean it for them. No more than when they step off the bus, they're the ones that take all their bags off the bus. There's nobody coming and taking their bag into the hotel or into the dressing rooms. They're doing it for themselves because the All Blacks look after the All Blacks. Okay, so that's their value and that's their actions to show those values. Okay, so to give a few more examples of the values, of examples of behaviors for values, we'll have a look here. So courage. Okay, so having the courage to speak up for what you believe might look like stopping a conversation where there's casual sexism and asking the person not to speak like that around you. So you're in a situation, there's conversation going on, somebody makes a casually sexist comment and you have a choice. You sit there and you don't say anything, or you ask the person not to speak like that around you. Okay, so which of those shows courage? Is it sitting there and not saying anything, or is it speaking up? Okay, so the courageous option is to speak up. Okay, that doesn't mean it's the easy option. So generally, living to our values is challenging because it's making the harder decision. Okay, so it's not making decisions easy, but it's guiding us in a way that our behaviors are leading to our values. So fun is another one. So Steve Kerr talked about having music in his in the gym when they're training. Okay, so maybe it looks like you're playing music for the warm up, or that you have a fun schoolyard game at the end of a session or the end of a match to ensure that your players are enjoying the session. So again, you're in a situation, match ends badly, you lose the game, but your value is having fun. So do you finish that match by playing a little game, regardless of the age of the players you're coaching, but you play a game to lighten the mood and to make sure they've had a little bit of fun before they go home? Is that easy to do after a game has been lost? No, but you're making a decision based on the values you have for you and then essentially for your team. Okay, learning is another one. So maybe your behavior is to reach out to coaches in your club or outside your club, and setting up a community of practice that meets regularly to share your experiences and to share learnings. So again, you're reaching out to coaches that maybe you don't know very well. Is that difficult, challenging? Yes, absolutely. But is it living to your values? If your values are learning and that's a behavior that you decide to do, then yes. Okay, another example for family, that might look like saying no to work opportunities that conflict with family time. So you're getting opportunities offered to you, but you've already sectioned that time away for spending time with your family. So do you say yes to the opportunity and say no to family time, or do you do the opposite? And again, it's giving that focus of what your values are, that when you have decisions to make, you're lining up that decision. Is it in line with your value, or is it not in line with your value? Okay, so the task for this one, again with your pen and paper, is to write down what your value is. So have your 2 or 3 values. And then for each of those values, you're going to write what 3 or 4 behaviors are that support that value. And what 3 or 4 behaviors are that may tempt you that you might be tempted to do, even though they're outside of your values. So those behaviors that make you kind of slip away from your values a little bit. And then write down an example of a time when you're fully living this value. Okay, so have a think about what your behaviors have been like in line with your values previously, even though you might not have thought about it too much before, and identify times where you are living to this value. Okay, these values won't be new to you. You have been living them even if you haven't had them written down on paper. So it's identifying a time where you did live that value. Okay, and identifying behaviors that will support and that maybe don't support your behavior, your values. Okay, and that leads us on to our coaching philosophy. Okay, so what is a coaching philosophy? It's a tool to guide our coaching. Okay, it helps us identify what we're trying to achieve as a coach. Okay, and it also helps us to define what success looks like as a coach. Okay, so it's very similar to our personal vision, but just in terms of our coaching. Okay, so I have a few examples here. Everybody's coaching philosophy, just like their vision, just like their values, is going to be different. And you may agree or disagree with someone, that's absolutely fine. The idea is that we're looking at your coaching philosophy and what's right for you. Okay, so we have a couple of different ones here. So a basic philosophy that I've tried to follow during my coaching career, whether you're winning or losing, it's important to always be yourself. You can't change because of the circumstances around you. Okay, and then below that, a coaching philosophy: determine your players' talents and give them every weapon to get the most out of those talents. Okay, and then we have one here from Nick Kramer. Okay, so there's quite a lot in this one, but I think it gives us a really good idea how all the different components work together. So our core values, then the environment that we create, the player, how that affects training and how that affects match day. Okay, so it's just to give you a little bit of an idea what other people's coaching philosophies look like. So it can be as simple as one line, or it can be a little bit more complex where we're bringing everything together. Okay, so we're having what our team values are, what the environment we're trying to create looks like, how it affects the player, and how that affects our training and our match day. Okay, to give you a bit more of an example, my own coaching philosophy. So for me, I try to create a safe and fun environment for players to learn, develop and grow as people first and as players second. And I do that through trying to build strong relationships and developing trust. So I mentioned before, for me, my personal vision is to have an impact on people. So you can kind of see that through the need to build strong relationships, to develop trust with players, okay, in order to have an impact on them. I also want to educate players and give them the tools to make decisions on their own physical development and health when they're no longer in this environment. Okay, so that's to give you a little bit of an idea of what a coaching philosophy is, a few examples of what they are, of different people's coaching philosophies, and then hopefully for you to write down a little bit on your own coaching philosophy. Again, you're not going to be able to decipher your whole coaching philosophy in 20 seconds. It's something that you're going to need to spend a little bit of time thinking about. And the things we looked at before, so your personal vision, your values, your behaviors, they're going to feed in quite a lot into your coaching philosophy. The image we have here is of John Wooden, who again is a basketball coach, or was a basketball coach with UCLA. If you haven't heard of him, he's really worth looking up, particularly around coaching philosophies, around values. He's done a few. He's done a TED Talk and he's done a couple of books, which are really interesting. And he was a very successful coach and a teacher as well. And it gives a really good insight into how he coached and into his philosophy and values. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this part of the webinar. So looking at our self-awareness. So the 4 different questions that we want you to have answered is: what's your personal vision, your top 2 or 3 values, your behaviors for those values, so 3 or 4 that help you live those values, and 3 or 4 that may cause you to slip away from those values, and then what's your coaching philosophy. Okay, so as I mentioned before, it's not something that you write this down and it's set in stone. You should be refreshing it and revising it on a pretty regular basis. So coming back, refreshing it in your mind, reading through it again, and maybe just touching it up a little bit if there's things that have changed as you gain experience coaching, or as you're learning, and that you might feel, actually, my thoughts on that have shifted a little bit. So it's something it's a working document, if you want, and something that you continuously come back to. So that brings us back to our bigger picture. So you have the many different areas and the many different roles, but what we've just talked about are relevant no matter what your role is.
Thanks for watching our Camogie Coach webinar series, and we hope that you have got some insights and practical takeaway ideas that you can bring to your own coaching practice. Our final webinar, Strength and Conditioning Made Simple with Louise Keane, is on Thursday the 17th of December. Until then, keep learning.